Thanks, Ryan. As Ryan has already kind of hinted at, I'm Gord. And I'm also one of the folks who get to serve here on staff at Cedar Creek, and it is an honor to do that. 300 years ago, so it was a little while ago, 300 years ago, there was a British captain of a merchant ship whose name was Captain Fudge. Yes, that's actually his name. Captain Fudge is an actual historical figure. And Captain Fudge became notorious. When he came back to England, he would bring back with him all of his cargo, and he would bring back with him these, let's call them tall tales, these incredible embellishments. In actuality, they're lies. About his adventures, about what happened on the high seas. And Captain Fudge became so well known for these exaggerations that his crew members, when his crew members would begin to kind of tell a story and they would begin to exaggerate, all of the crew members would point at him and they would say, "Fudge, fudge, fudge." He became so well known that later on, when, in not just in Great Britain, but in North America, if there were kids, and they were playing marbles and one of the boys happened to, move his marble kind of surreptitiously, somebody else playing and who might notice it might say to him, "Hey, no fudging," right? I got that story from a sermon that Lee Strobel preached, and his sermon actually has had a significant impact on the way that I've thought about what we're going to talk about this morning. So, okay, fudging. Fudging, you still might hear that word used today. Maybe not all that often, but you might hear somebody described as kind of fudging on their expense account, adding stuff in that really shouldn't be there. Or somebody might fudge on their taxes, claiming something as a deduction when really that's not a legitimate deduction that you really shouldn't be claiming. They might exaggerate, or they might downplay, and just kind of downplay what they did. They might fudge on the actual details of something they're guilty of. Exaggeration. Stretching the truth. We all have done that before. Everybody does a little bit of a white lie sometimes, right? That's okay. That's not a big deal, right? Stretching the truth, well, that's just part of living in a post-truth culture. Advertisers do it all the time, right? If you use this hair product, your life is going to change irrevocably by changing shampoos. If you buy, for example, you buy a bag of chips, and it looks like the bag is this big, and you got this many chips when you open it, about that much, right? Let's see, what else? People say things that you just go, that is incredible. Really? People make all kinds of promises that they really can't keep. And sometimes they know that they can't keep. Stretching the truth on your resume it's just kind of something that people do. Peter Levine talks about how the New York and New Jersey Port Authority once did a little test. And they ran an ad advertising a spot for an electrician with a Sontag, who had experience with Sontag connectors. those of you who are electricians? Sontag connectors? Good. No idea because it didn't exist. They had 170 people apply for this position as electrician claiming expertise with Sontag connectors when they don't even exist. Lying, stretching the truth has become woven into the fabric of our culture so that when somebody says yes, they actually mean maybe, or I'll think about it. Or if they say no, it might mean not now, or possibly. And because of all of that, because we fudge on the truth, there is this massive credibility gap. There's this massive credibility gap where we don't know quite who to trust anymore. And in order to have confidence that somebody is actually going to deliver on what they promise, a lot of times, especially in the corporate world, all of those promises get tangled up in legal documents, regulations, and contracts. And even then, that doesn't guarantee somebody's honesty. Because we fudge so much, we're caught in this cloud of uncertainty. And Jesus addresses that situation in the passage that we're going to look at this morning. Jesus, in the greatest sermon in history, has been going through these situations where he says, you've heard it said, but let me say to you something else and reframe that a little bit. And he's going to do that again this morning. So this morning we are in Matthew chapter 5. We're following through the Sermon on the Mount. And this Sunday, it's going to start in Matthew 5, verse 33. So Jesus teaching, he says, again, you have heard that it was said to people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows that you have made. So this issue of truth-telling, this issue of being a person of your word is not just a modern-day problem or issue. This goes all the way back in the Bible to the days of the Old Testament. And there are passages like Leviticus chapter 19, verse 12, where God gives these instructions to his people. And he says, do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of God. Or another passage, Numbers chapter 30, verse 2 says, when a man makes a vow to the Lord or takes an oath to obligate himself by a pledge, he must not break his word, but must do everything that he said. You see, sticking to the facts, following through on commitments that you make, those are not just modern day problems. People had that same issue back in the days of the Bible. And again, there's this credibility gap. And so what people would do in order to emphasize, in order to try and convince people that, maybe other times I wasn't quite telling the exact truth. This time I'm telling the truth. What they would do is they would swear an oath. And an oath is basically where you appeal to, you make a promise and you appeal to just anybody, I suppose, in the ancient Near East could have done this, appeal to a higher power, or if it's God's people in the Old Testament, it would be appealing to God. And they would say, they would ask God to witness their words. God to witness their words, but not just witness their words, but to emphasize how committed they are to keeping this particular promise. They're making this oath they would also ask God to bring about some kind of punishment onto their lives if they didn't keep their promise, if they didn't keep their word. And we still do this today. You're probably most familiar with this practice when it comes to a courtroom setting. So, maybe you've seen it happen on, Lincoln Lawyer, on Suits, on Boston Legal, or whatever your favorite, legal drama is, where somebody gets up and is going to be a witness, is going to give testimony, and they swear an oath. They put their hand on a Bible and swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. And what happens if later on it's found out, that they didn't really tell the truth? They've committed perjury. And as a result, there are all kinds of negative legal consequences that begin to kick into place because they broke their oath. We still do the same thing outside of a formal courtroom setting too. That whole issue of truth-telling is still an issue for us. And so if we want to convince somebody that this time we're telling the truth, that we are not exaggerating, what do? I swear to God, it's true. With God as my witness, fill in the blank. Or, may God strike me with lightning. Or this old classic, cross my heart and hope to die, fill in blank. Right? I'm so serious about telling the truth that I'm swearing an oath to you that this time I'm going to follow through, or what I'm saying is actually fact. So Jesus knows that this is a problem. This is part of our broken, fallen, sinful human condition. And Jesus addresses it, takes it head on. He says, you've heard that it was said, not breaking your oath. Jesus reframes this. He says, but I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. Painful reality, right? All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Now again, Jesus is not trying to say don't ever swear an oath, when you go to court. That's not really the point that he's trying to make here. Once again, he's digging down to a deeper issue, a deeper problem. Not only what we say, but our heart set. It's a condition of our hearts as we make these commitments, as we make these promises. And throughout the Sermon on the Mount, that's been the focus that Jesus has been zeroing in on and saying, hey, it's not just about the letter of the law. It's not just about do this, don't do that. It's about where's your heart at with all of these things. And in particular here, Jesus is zeroing in on making and keeping commitments. And here when Jesus says, don't swear an oath about all, and using all of these different things, they were kind of outs for people that they used. If you swear by this, then okay, it's got to work, but if I swear by this, then there's some wiggle room, right? And Jesus is saying, no, that's not where we're at here. Jesus is talking about a lifestyle, a way of living that's committed to complete integrity and complete honesty. He's saying, live your life, be so trustworthy that you don't need to swear an oath. That people, you are so well known, you have this reputation for following through on your commitments, that you do not exaggerate, that you do not stretch the truth, that people know that when you say yes to something, when you commit to something, that you're going to follow through. That you are a man or a woman of your word. And if you say no, then people know that you really aren't able to commit to that. You know, and you're not just giving kind of a false promise to kind of pacify somebody. And again, Jesus isn't saying, don't ever change your mind. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, be so committed to living a life of complete integrity in your words, in the commitments that you make, that every time that you say yes, every time that you say no, people know that they can count on you for that. And this attention to truth-telling, how does that play itself out? How do we do that in the real world, where the world we live in is not that kind of world, unfortunately, where people are most prone to fudge? This morning I want to look at three areas, three places where we are sometimes tempted to fudge on our commitments, where we are sometimes tempted to exaggerate, to not completely tell the truth. We're going to look at three areas. We're going to look at the casual commitments that we make, we're going to look at the corporate commitments that we make, and we're going to look at the kingdom commitments that we make. Okay? So let's look first at our casual commitments. Casual commitments are promises. Promises that we make to each other. They're promises, there's things that we're going to say that we do, things that we say to our friends, to our spouse, to our kids, to our good friends. And we say them with the best of intentions, but when it comes to actually following through on them, to actually carrying them out, our yes isn't always fully yes, or no isn't always no. And a lot of times we make these casual commitments not because we're starting out with, okay, I'm trying to hoodwink you, or I'm going to lie or whatever. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about these commitments that we make on the fly. Commitments that we make regularly, but we don't actually think about everything that we're saying. We don't think about the commitment that we're making, or the truth of the thing that we're trying to describe. Sometimes we forget, or we fudge, we don't come through on what we're talking about. And what happens is, with these casual commitments, when we don't follow through, it hurts, it damages our credibility. So see if you recognize some of these. The doctor will be with you in a minute. Apologies to our friends in the medical profession. You ever heard this? Oh, we'll do coffee sometime. Right. Just give me a call and I will be there. I'll pay you back tomorrow. Maybe somebody come up to you and said, hey, this will just take a minute of your time. 48 minutes later, time's done. Yeah, I'll get that done. I'll get that done today. Or, I'll pray for you. That last one kind of hits a little close to home. I don't know about you, but I've said that to people. Somebody's come to me, and typically if I say it, it'll be, somebody's come to me with a concern, a challenge in their life, and just to kind of, sometimes it's like, I need to be somewhere else, and so, okay, yeah, I'll pray for you. I'll pray for you about that. You ever done that? And then the next time that you see them, go, I forgot. And even, this is so how messed up I can be. Sometimes, they'll say, hey, could you pray for me for this particular situation? I've got this interview on Monday. And so, yeah, for sure, I'll pray for you. And then next time you see them on Thursday, and you go, I forgot. Oh, God, please retroactively apply this prayer to that past situation, right? It's like, geez. Yeah, I'll pray for you. I'm learning that in order to try and keep those commitments, I'm learning that instead of just kind of blurting out, because I don't know what else to say, and I want to fill the dead air, rather than just blurting that out, I'll say, yes, I'll pray for you. And then I'm learning that I just afterwards, like as soon as that conversation, that situation is done, just to stop and to pray right then. To bring whatever that situation is to God and pray about it in the moment. That way you can pray and keep your commitment. And the problem with our casual commitments, when we make these casual commitments on the fly, the problem is that, this isn't the problem part, but what we do is every time you make a casual commitment, you're putting a deposit in somebody's trust bank. Right? And when you say, yeah, I'll do that, or yes, this is the way it is, and it comes through, people learn to trust you. And every time that you make a casual commitment and you don't come through, or you were stretching the truth, you make a withdrawal. And if you make too many withdrawals, the trust bank is empty. And people are standing there going, I don't believe a word that you're saying. How can I trust you? And this is where Jesus' point about truth-telling, living such a life of integrity and trustworthiness in terms of the commitments that you make, that people know that when you say yes to something, you actually are going to follow through on it. Your yes does mean yes. Your no does mean no. And maybe to put that into practice, rather than kind of making these flippant or making these offhanded, making these really quick kind of commitments and not thinking about them, rather than making casual commitments, let's begin to make careful commitments. Instead of casual commitments, let's make careful commitments. To be thoughtful about the things that we say, to keep in mind the commitments that we make, and to make it a point to follow through on not just the big commitments, but all of the smaller ones as well. And not make casual commitments, to not fudge on our commitments. Casual commitments. What about corporate commitments? Corporate commitments are a little bit different. Corporate commitments are the commitments that we make, and I'm going to use the broad term, I'm going to say in the corporate world. By that I mean, whether you're at work or, maybe you're at school. And maybe, you're thinking, going, yeah, that's nice. And personally, I'm committed to that living this life of integrity and following through on my commitments. But, I live in a world where things are not that way. In the real world, it's the law of the jungle. Only the strong and the sneaky survive. Making corporate commitments at school is following through on your commitment to hand in an assignment when it's supposed to be due. I can't tell you, as a teacher, I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody kind of email me or get in touch with me and say, hey, Gord, can I get an extension on this assignment? Things just got really, really busy, and, can I have an extra week? Really? When you signed up for the course, you committed to doing the assignments in a timely way. Or here's the other side to that, corporate commitments. Corporate commitments are making commitments about the products that you represent. Let's say if you're selling a product or a service. And let's say, rather than saying, oh yeah, this works all the time, 100%. When actually it only works between, 16 and 24 degrees Celsius most of the time. Or you make a promise, and you want to stick up for your team, but, you make a promise, oh yeah, my team, for sure, we'll get that done. When you have no idea whether your team can actually get that done in time or not. Or maybe you make that commitment, and in order to keep that commitment, you drive your team absolutely batty. Because you're driving them, you made a commitment that you really shouldn't have made. Bad corporate commitments are when companies cut corners for the sake of the bottom line. Bad corporate commitments are when employees don't give a full day's work for a full day's pay. Bad corporate commitments are when companies and individuals make excuses for not coming through, when quality is sacrificed. And the temptation to fudge on those corporate commitments comes in all kinds of shapes, all kinds of sizes. And again, Jesus teaches, when you make a commitment, when you say you're going to do something, if you represent something, then represent it fully and truthfully. Let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no. And I know it's hard, but it is possible in the corporate world to succeed, to be effective. You may not like their chicken sandwiches, you may not like their policies, but Chick-fil-A is a company that is trying to build this ethos of keeping its corporate commitments. Chick-fil-A has 28 stores in Canada, or outlets, restaurants, whatever you want to call them, in Canada, 3,000 around the world. And they're best known for their chicken sandwiches, though they have more than that. And they're best known for, if you've seen some of their advertisements where they've got cows holding up signs that say, "Eat more chicken." Chick-fil-A was founded in 1946 by S. Truett Cathay and is still headed by his grandson, Andy. And what makes Chick-fil-A unique, I think, is that they try to live out in the corporate world their commitment to Jesus as a company, as an international company. So they have, as part of their mission statement, Chick-fil-A, part of their mission statement is to glorify God. Chick-fil-A is the only nationally represented fast food chain that is closed on Sundays. They're closed on Sundays so that their operators, so that their employees have a chance, they can go to church on a Sunday, or whatever other commitments that their families might ask of them, or that they might want to do with their families. And so one time the CEO of Chick-fil-A was asked, well, okay, doesn't closing on Sunday, doesn't that hurt your bottom line? He said, I don't think we make any sacrifice by being closed on Sunday. It helps us attract people who appreciate Sundays off. Whether they go to church or not is their decision. We say, well, gee, if you'll eat with us for 6 days a week, then we'll let you eat somewhere else on Sunday. He goes on, he says, we have certainly demonstrated that in most cases, we can generate more sales in 6 days than our competition in 7. And he's pretty realistic. He says, no one's going to eat at the same restaurant all the time, and so we just help people arrange the day on which they're going to eat at Chick-fil-A. Right? But so that's part of their corporate ethos. It's part of their corporate commitment. But it's more than that. They begin company meetings, company retreats with prayer time. They have set up foster homes in a number of different countries around the world to help kids who are vulnerable to have a safe place to stay. They have handed out millions of dollars in scholarships, no strings attached. And their company ethos to their employees is so strong that it has a 60% turnover rate. Now you're going, well, 60% of the employees turn over in a year? That's a lot, but compared to the 107% that most other fast food chains have, that's pretty good. They are deeply committed to going the extra mile for you. They're so committed to that people who are Chick-fil-A fans will camp out in front of a brand new Chick-fil-A store in order to be able to get a sandwich, be one of the first people to get a sandwich whenever they open a new outlet. It's just kind of the ethos of Chick-fil-A. They have, in my estimation, as best as I can tell as an outsider, I don't think they've fudged on their corporate commitments. They've applied Romans 12, verse 17, to the way that they do business. The Living Bible puts it this way, so it's paraphrased a bit, but it says, do things in such a way that everyone can see that you are honest, clear through. They're a company who is successful, thriving, and truthful. They take and bring people from all different backgrounds, and they initiate them into this corporate ethos of keeping their commitments, of standing for their commitment, and in particular, their commitment to Christ. So yes, it may not be easy to keep your corporate commitments. You may work in an environment where that's not, that may impact the way that you do business. But Jesus' teaching about letting your yes be yes and your no be no applies even there, even in that difficult spot. One last area where this kind of shows up is not just in our casual commitments, or now hopefully our careful commitments, not just in our corporate commitments, but thirdly in our kingdom commitments. Kingdom commitments are those commitments that you make between yourself and God. And so these would include things like we talked about before, about praying for people, about regularly getting involved in church, about serving, serving God using your gifts, your abilities, and trying to help other people to come to know Jesus. All of those are kinds of kingdom commitments. And the challenge with kingdom commitments, maybe they're a bit different from some of the other commitments that we make. The challenge with kingdom commitments is that many of those commitments are either hidden or internal. They're between you and God, so, we don't often see some of those commitments that we make. You don't know whether I'm keeping my commitment to reading through, for example, the Gospel of Matthew in its original language. You don't know whether I'm doing that or not. I don't know whether you're keeping your commitment to serving God with to the very best of your ability, not just 20%, full out, or 50%, but to the very best of your ability, that you are serving God and serving others. You don't know whether I'm keeping my commitment to giving, not just financially, but giving sacrificially to God in the work of God's kingdom. You have no easy way of knowing that. And I don't know whether you are keeping your commitment to sharing Jesus with people around you in your circles. And because of that, because so much of our kingdom commitments are hidden, because they're not easily seen, hopefully the evidence is seen, but those commitments aren't seen, aren't heard, it can be easy to fudge on those commitments. Many of them only God knows if you're keeping them. Many of them only God knows what your heart is really like. And it's very tempting to kind of look at somebody and go, oh, they've got it all together, whatever that looks like. But underneath the hood, there's a lot of problems. I would venture to say that all of us have made commitments that we fudged on. We've made casual commitments that we haven't followed through on. We've made corporate commitments to represent the products, the services that we sell or represent, that we deliver on. We've made kingdom commitments to God, made promises to God saying, I will do this, and we haven't shown up. Here's the good part about that, or here's the good news maybe in the midst of that. 2 Timothy 2 verse 13 says this about God: if we are faithless, he will remain faithful. If we are faithless, he will remain faithful. God does not fudge. God, even when we fail, God holds out his arms and says, come home to me. I love you, and I want to help you. I want to help you keep your commitments. I want to help you follow through. I will give you my Spirit. And if you partner with me, then we will begin to change, to transform the way that you interact with other people. We will begin to reshape the commitments that you make so that you can be that person who says yes and follows through, and people know it. People can trust your word because they know God is working in you. Or that when you say, no, this is not something that I can do, this is not something that I can be a part of, that they know that you're a person of your word. They know that you have developed this life, this reputation for truth-telling, that you have this reputation for being completely honest. Maybe a little bit like Tanner Muncie. Tanner Muncie, you go, I've never heard of him. Yeah, probably not. Tanner Muncie is a Little League baseball player. He's 7 years old in Wellington, Florida, who did something so outstanding in terms of truth-telling that it landed his story on the pages of Sports Illustrated. So here's what happened. Tanner Muncie was playing in a Little League baseball game. He was playing on first base. He was the first baseman that day. And playing against opposing team. Opposing team hits the ball, and there's a runner on first base running to second base, okay? So that's the scenario, hits the ball. Tanner Muncie catches the ball, fields the ball. Runner's running past. He reaches out and tries to tag the runner. And the umpire who's watching all of this unfold, he says, "You're out." And Tanner kind of looks at, he kind of looks down and looks at the ball in his hand. And he says, "Mister, I missed him." And the umpire goes, "What?" Yeah, I missed him. You missed him? Really? Yeah, I did. Okay, well, I guess that means he's safe. This is a big Little League game, right? So you can imagine his teammates are not at all happy with him. How could you do that, right? Well, this isn't the only time that he does this. So a couple of weeks later, there's another Little League baseball game. This time, Tanner Muncie is playing shortstop. And again, there's a runner on second base, and someone hits the ball, and the runner runs from second base to third base. And Tanner again fields the ball, again reaches out to tag him, and again, the umpire makes his call, and this time he says, "All right, he's safe." Tanner looks at the ball, kicks the dirt, throws the ball back to the pitcher. The umpire sees this. This is the same umpire as last time. And the umpire says to Tanner Muncie, "Hey, Tanner, what's wrong?" And Tanner says, "Well, this time I tagged him." "You tagged him? What do you mean you tagged him?" "Well, yeah, I tagged him." "Are you sure?" Yeah, for sure. I had the ball in my hand. I actually tagged him when he went by. And so the umpire goes, "All right, that's it. You're out." And the opposing manager is just kind of going bonkers. He's going, "What are you doing, umpire? You can't change a call like that." And the umpire goes on and he explains the situation. He says what he saw last time. And he says to this opposing manager, "I know this little boy. This little boy is committed to telling the truth. He is a truth teller. And so if he says he's out, then he's out." I think that's an example of the kind of thing that Jesus is talking about living with so much integrity, about living with so much follow-through in our words, that people know that we are committed to telling the truth no matter what. That people know that when we say yes to something, we mean it and we follow through. We say no, and people know the same thing. That we are promise keepers, that we are truth tellers, that we are people of our word. And we stand out from all of the background noise of all of the other people who fudge on their commitments because we hold true. Would you pray with me this morning? Lord God, we live in the middle of a culture, we live in the middle of a society that is not committed to truth-telling. There are wild exaggerations. And as a result, God, it is hard to trust. But you call us to something different. You call us to this life of integrity, integrity in our actions, integrity in our words. And God, we ask for your help in this. God, help us to follow the promptings of your Spirit. God, help us to live by the teachings in Scripture and to live in a way that follows through on our commitments, that doesn't exaggerate, that doesn't embellish, but speaks honestly about what we will do, or maybe about what we won't do. So God, today we pause again and we ask that that your Spirit would reshape not just our actions, but God, that you would reshape our hearts, that our hearts would desire this, that would long for this, that would want to be the kind of people whose yes means yes consistently and whose no means no regularly all the time. God, we pray that your Spirit would work this transformation in us for your honor and for your glory.